Today I'm going to talk about a topic that Leostream's actually been talking about for years now, which is VDI implemented on OpenStack. Now, why might you want to do this? We see a lot of VDI environments being built on top of VMware, maybe on top of Microsoft, a lot going up into the cloud these days. Why would you look at OpenStack? Well, for one, the nice thing about OpenStack, as you might know, is it is built on open source software. There are versions of OpenStack that you can get from the likes of Red Hat or SUSE, for example, that have a license fee associated with them for support. So if you do need an enterprise supported version of OpenStack, you can definitely find one of those. But if you are just looking for a great open source way to build a VDI environment so that you can get out from underneath the licensing fees that are associated with these full stack VDI vendors, OpenStack is a great option for doing that. And the thing about OpenStack is it is essentially modeled after the cloud. So it gives you a cloud native approach for modeling VDI workloads. This means you have that dynamic capacity expansion and contraction that the cloud approach to modeling VDI gives you. Another nice thing, again, this is kind of related to the fact that OpenStack is cloud native. You can isolate tenants. You can create private networks within your OpenStack environment, similar to how you can have private networks inside of AWS or Azure. And then if you're an MSP or just modeling different projects, you put those projects or tenants into these separate networks, and you can manage independent environments within one hosting platform. So again, great for MSPs or just for network isolated workloads. The other thing, and this wraps kind of into the fact that it's open source, it's really inexpensive to scale, or I should say less expensive to scale out your environment. Because essentially when you build an enterprise OpenStack environment, you have nodes or servers that are dedicated to the compute, to running the different virtual machines that you're running. And as your environment needs to grow, you essentially just grow out compute nodes. You add compute nodes to the environment, and you can base those off of open source hypervisors like KVM. So you don't have to add additional hypervisor licenses to your environment to scale it out. So it makes your costs a little more controllable as you grow your environment. The last thing I put on there, back years ago when OpenStack was a little bit newer, you didn't have the ability to run vGPU, to attach a virtual GPU to a VM. So you couldn't necessarily run graphic intense workloads on OpenStack. That's no longer true. You can definitely leverage vGPU for high performance and then use the high performance display protocols to get really good graphics, do high performance compute. So really any type of workload that you want to host on OpenStack, you can do now, from task workers all the way up to CAD, CAM, whatever you have. So how does Leostream help this? OpenStack itself, there are lots and lots of open source projects associated with OpenStack, but there's not one for VDI really. So that's where Leostream comes in. We have native integration with the OpenStack APIs. So we can sit on top of your OpenStack environment to control the capacity and power states across all your tenants. So you have a single interface where you can build new VMs, tear them back down, automate the power states, and do all of this through rules that you set up in the connection broker so that you don't have to be manually managing your OpenStack environment on a day-to-day basis. One of the newer parts of the Leostream platform is our Leostream Gateway, and it's great in OpenStack because you do want to keep your OpenStack instances isolated in their private networks and not allocate floating IPs to them. That's not just useful if you're on-prem. If you send users home, you don't want to have public IP addresses for your various virtual machines. So instead, you would use the Leostream Gateway as a tunnel or gateway into the private networks that you have hosted on OpenStack. So that's great. Remote users now have access. On-prem users can have access all through the Leostream Gateway management. The next item, mixing and matching display protocols. We see this a lot in Leostream environments. One of our core strengths is the fact that we do support upwards of 10 or so different display protocols, anything from RDP and VNC or even SSH to Linux machines, all the way up to really great high-performant display protocols like MECDI TGX or HP Z-Central Remote Boost, Tered HPC over IP, and you can use these side by side. Even a single user can have access to a machine via RDP that's just running your timesheet software, but then a workstation with Adobe Premiere Pro on it that they're accessing via HP Z-Central Remote Boost. So it's really great that you have this flexibility to leverage the performant display protocols, which you need to license only where they're needed, while using these freer commodity protocols where they're appropriate. And that mix and match ability in Leostream is true not just from the display protocol perspective, but also from the hosting platform perspective. So once you have OpenStack and you have this cloud native approach to VDI, you might want to augment it with public cloud or with on-prem workstations. You can manage all of these from the single Leostream interface. And I'll show you that in the demo that we will do in about 2 seconds here, because the last thing I will mention is the great thing that Leostream also provides is the audit level tracking of desktop usage. So not only can you manage all of your environment from one interface, but you can track it, who's using it, where are they using it from, how long have they accessed. And in these days and age, it's very important to know who's using what and from where in your environment. So to kind of show this in action, let me share my screen and hide that guy. So here what you see is the front end for the Leostream connection broker. Now this is fully customizable, so if you are an MSP looking at building a solution on OpenStack, you can brand this with your logos and your colors, HTML and CSS, you can go crazy. Here I have a very simple OpenStack environment. So in my case, I just have a couple instances pre-populated in here, and then I have a couple images pre-populated in here as well. These can be any operating system. I happen to just be using the default Cirrus right now, but you can have Windows, Linux, whatever you want to use. So here I'm going to go ahead and log into the administrator web interface, and users can use that login page as well. What they would see is different. So I'm not going to go through an entire demo and show you all that there is to do in Leostream. You can look through some of the other videos for that. Let's just show you the OpenStack specific pieces. Here in centers, this is where you connect your Leostream environment up to your OpenStack environment. So here's my particular OpenStack center. We do leverage the Keystone identity to authenticate into your OpenStack environment, and then use the OpenStack APIs for using the credentials for the user that you enter in the center as well. So give us the auth URL, optionally specify a region, domain, and then the project information. So the project is essentially a tenant. So if you have a multi-tenant environment in OpenStack, you simply create a different center for each one of those tenants, and then that'll inventory them into this one connection broker Leostream environment. As soon as you create your center, Leostream reaches out to OpenStack and inventories everything that's in that project. And that will show up here on the resources page. So for my very simple environment here, I look at OpenStack. Though here's the 2 machines that are currently hosted in OpenStack. And on the images page here, I can sort by OpenStack, and I'll see the 2 images that I have. So I currently have a Cirrus and the CentOS 7. These pages are great. The desktops page is really one of the powerful pages in the broker for giving you a way to control everything that's in your environment. If I clear my filters, these are all the different machines that are managed by my Leostream broker, and I can use this to power control. So I can reboot machines across various different platforms, all from this one interface. I can see which users are currently assigned. So anytime you have a table like this, it's great for just seeing all the information that you have in your Leostream environment, and they're always customizable, so you can change them around and make sure that you see the information that's most applicable to your use case. So after you create your center for OpenStack, then via pools, here's where you can control capacity in OpenStack automatically through Leostream. So if I look at my OpenStack pools, I created one pool here, which is just everything in that center. So everything in the project. This is a handy organizational tool because what you can then do is use Leostream roles to create essentially administrators for that tenant who only have access to that desktops page, but only for this particular center or project. So gives that delegated administration. So that's why I created that pool. And then inside of here, I have a test pool, which is going to be just my VMs that I'm using. So the way Leostream pools are set up, you have a pool definition here. This defines what's in the pool, and it's very dynamic. So if you do go into OpenStack itself and spin up some machines, launch some machines, when the broker re-inventories that center, so what we call a scan, when we scan the center, we'll find the new desktops and we'll sort them into the pools appropriately. Right now, I have nothing in this pool, but we can change that down here in this provisioning section. So I can enable provisioning. And now there's two different ways right now to manage the capacity in OpenStack. And it is a little bit of ahead of time provisioning. One of the things that we want to add later on this year is a concept of on-demand provisioning. So offer the user an empty pool and then provision the machine when they request it. That gives you a way to really keep your capacity low until somebody needs something. But here it is ahead of time. So here I'm saying I'm going to start provisioning if there's fewer than one machine available. So when I save this pool, since there are 0, it'll kick off 1, and then I can cap it off. So this way you won't go over quotas that you've set for different projects. You can also do this based on time of day. So this is kind of the one caveat to needing to have an ahead of time desktop. I can set my static limits to 0 and then just change the values at particular times of day. So that's kind of handy. Let's just go back to static for now. So the provisioning limits will say when does the broker provision, and then the provisioning parameters tell us how. So if I'm provisioning an OpenStack, essentially this is a lot, but not all of the information that you enter when you launch an instance directly in OpenStack itself. So I set a name for the VMs that I'm going to create, indicate which availability zone in your OpenStack project you're going to put this into, which image. And the key about the image is that you always want to make sure it was created from a machine that had the Leostream agent installed, and that Leostream agent is registered with your connection broker. So I pick the image. You can pick whichever flavor. If you have custom flavors, they'll all show up in this list. Your networks for that project show up there, so you can say if it's a public or private. If you do want to associate floating IPs with the machine, you can tell the broker to do that. If you have available floating IPs, it will just associate it with that instance that we provision. If you don't have any, we'll go ahead and allocate a new one for you and then associate it. It's off by default. Most people tuck things away in a private IP and then don't associate. Yeah, obviously then the nice thing about OpenStack or any cloud is the security groups that are associated with your virtual machines gives you additional way to lock down access to a machine. So you can indicate which and how many security groups that you want associated with these instances. And then there's a flag to mark it deletable. Essentially, if you want Leostream to be able to contract the capacity as well as expand it out, you mark the machines that you're provisioning as deletable. And that way, through Leostream release plans, you can have us terminate the instances in OpenStack as well. Now, the one thing I will point out here, deploy from image, right now these are images that are created inside of OpenStack. Now I know when you launch an instance in OpenStack, you have a few different options for how, or what I should say, you're launching that instance from. We are adding volumes to this as well. So you can say if it's getting launched from an image or a volume, because that's a common use case that we've seen. So I didn't change anything important, right? Let's go ahead and save it. So once you save it and your provisioning parameters are valid, it will then go ahead and, since I changed them, kick off provisioning. And I can see that happening here on the log page. So I saved the form, provisioning got triggered. It went ahead and it started the provisioning in OpenStack and imported the machine in here. And if I come into OpenStack and refresh here, let's see if I've been timed out. Nope. you can see the machine getting provisioned. I happen to put it in the public network there. So then once that machine is done provisioning and the Leostream agent has registered with the broker, it's ready to offer out to users. And essentially then everything else that you can do in Leostream, the power control plans, the protocol plans, release plans, everything here, an OpenStack, a VM that's in OpenStack is treated just like any other machine that's managed in Leostream. So you have a lot of functionality and a lot of flexibility there. And with that, I think I will stop. If you do want to try this out, you can always contact us. Let me see if I can bring that up. At sales@leostream.com. We're happy to give you a free trial. And we hope to hear from you. Thanks.